Awesome. Welcome, everyone. We're going to give people just a few more minutes to trickle in. While we wait, feel free to put where you're joining us from in the chat. All right, we are going to kick it off today. Thank you all so much for joining. We are heading into Raiders of the Lost Lifecycle. I'm Molly Evola, and I'm going to be your guide through the journey today. Think of me as Indiana Jones, but instead of an ancient map, I'm armed with dynamic journey maps, behavioral triggers, and smart segmentation. We're going to dive in. So why are we here? Lifecycle marketers are known for having messy webs of spaghetti workflows, siloed data, and spend hours manual mapping and labeling. But now marketers have AI as this incredible tool in our toolkit. It's helping with personalization, experimentation, and iteration. So today we're going to dive into the ways that lifecycle marketers are actually using AI to work smarter, get out of the weeds, and create customer experiences that feel intentional and scalable. Before we embark on the journey, let's meet our full adventure crew. So I'm joined today by Meli and Neha. Meli, would you like to kick it off with your intro?
Yes, absolutely. So hello, I'm Meli. I am a retention, lifecycle, and growth marketer who's been based in the Bay Area for the last 10 years, working at companies like Rakuten, Honeybook, and now Notion.
Awesome. Neha, over to you.
Hey everyone, I'm Neha. I'm the CEO and co-founder of JustWords. I'm based in San Francisco, and I did a lot of growth things at Twitter and Pinterest before starting the company. I'm very excited to join you guys today.
Awesome. We're so excited to have y'all here. Thanks so much for being a part of this. And just a quick note for everyone, as you have questions throughout our journey today, you can ask those in the questions tab and we'll answer them at the end of the webinar. So speaking of the journey we're going on, we'll start by uncovering the reality of AI in marketing, and then we'll dive into what our new maps look like. We'll unpack the tools that power segmentation, journey building, and personalization, and you'll see examples, hear hot takes, and I hear there might be some treasure along the way. First, we're going to hear from Indy himself.
My name's Indiana Jones, but y'all can call me Indy. See y'all heading out on the Raiders of Lost Lifecycle expedition. Be careful out there. It's a scary one. I went on this same expedition once before, and I may have dropped some artifacts behind. Could you pick them up for me? When you hear this sound, keep your eyes peeled for my map, fedora, a lurking shadowy figure, and that arc he keeps looking for. Keep in mind the stop where you found it, and you should be good to go. Eyes peeled, Raiders. Keep close watch and listen to your guides. Till we meet again.
Awesome. So let's zoom out for a second. The job of a lifecycle marketer has always been send the right message to the right person at the right time, but the how has gotten intense. We're expected to move faster, say more, and do more. So let's start there. Meli and Neha, what pressures are y'all seeing lifecycle marketers face today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think lifecycle marketers have always been folks who wear many, many hats. You can be a designer, an email coder, a content creator. And now I think the pressure we're feeling is to do all of that much more efficiently, where everyone has probably been on LinkedIn lately and seen posts about agents replacing 40% of your job and being able to work twice as fast. And so now I think we're really in a world where things are moving a lot faster and the technology and its capabilities are pacing so quickly that it can feel really hard to keep up.
Yeah, I echo that. There's all this hype on LinkedIn and many other channels on how we, both grasp AI tools, but at the same time, create efficiencies for ourselves. I think there's this fundamental question on how is everybody's role changing, including CEOs, and so everybody's thinking about what their new role looks like, and that goes for lifecycle marketing too. So everybody's thinking about how to stay on top of things, but at the same time, because of the hype, sometimes or all the time, it feels like we're not keeping up. Everybody feels the pressure of what's more that we need to do that we're not doing enough of.
Yeah, definitely. Neha, I'm curious, how do you recommend marketers kind of know what's relevant versus knowing what's noise? How do they filter through all of that?
Yeah, a couple of things we've seen that are pretty practical and applicable in my view. One, most marketing AI tools that do a good job of sort of integrating AI and use cases of marketing are pretty well embedded in their workflows. And so, for example, like we'll talk more about this, but how we embed with Customerio, which a lot of marketers use, make things easy for them to get started. So that 0 to 1 cycle looks really easy for marketers. The second thing I'd say is everybody's truly experimental right now with every AI tool out there. And so as long as it solves a use case for you, whether it's big or small, I think that works. Anything that doesn't, it's fine to play with it and find your use cases as you go. But that's something you would want to figure out. So I guess TLDR, play with all the tools you want to, and you should create your own GPTs and agents and whatnot. But in the end, really look forward to something that you can make use of right now today.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think one of the things I'm curious about, Meli, is how do you connect that to what's actually saving you time or what's actually giving you real impact? What is the outcome that you're seeing from using some of these AI tools or testing things out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the 0 to 1 component is so important because there is a lot of the fear of missing out right now, of feeling behind, like you're not using the best tool stack or saving enough of your own time so that you can work more efficiently. And I think it's so important to embed those tools within your existing workflow in ways that are natural to you. And you don't need to go 0 to 100 and start coding that agent immediately to replace yourself. You can start with something that makes your day-to-day tasks a lot more efficient. And that's something that we really look for when looking at third-party AI tools to integrate within our world of where are we blocked on personalization or where haven't we been able to scale effectively because of resources, and how might AI present a solution for that versus trying to just implement the fanciest AI tooling because it now exists and we want to be a part of that world.
Yeah, I think it's hard to break through all of the things that are out there. Everything is shiny and exciting, and again, trying to find something, you have to test a lot, and there's a lot to test, but it's fun along the way. So once you figure out kind of where AI can be a useful tool, what is that meaning for how we build lifecycle journeys now? I'll kind of pivot to this next review, but how are things changing for lifecycle marketers and journey mapping specifically with AI? Maybe Meli, if you could share anything pre-AI to now, what does that look like for you?
Yes, I think this slide sums it up really well. Messy and manual, I feel like, has been the lifecycle world for a lot of us, where the logic that we've had access to is pretty static, where we want to personalize everything and create these really dynamic journeys. And in theory, that's how lifecycle should always be operating. But in practice, what we end up doing is building what we lovingly refer to as the octopus. And I think you'll see a lot of in some of our slides today, but basically many, many branches where lifecycle marketers, especially when you're on leaner teams, are creating tons of copy variations, working on value propositions for different audiences, trying to build that all together while accounting for all of the right logic and filters and mapping of what that particular type of user should see. And so I think the principles of lifecycle have really remained the same of we want to create highly segmented, personalized, dynamic journeys for our users, but we're finally getting to a place where the manual and messy piece has become a little more streamlined and automated with access to tools that allow us to have that multi-branch, very heavily invested in segmentation become more streamlined with segmentation that's automatic, and content that can live all within one place and be dynamically shown. So it becomes more of the choose your own adventure world that we're hoping users experience versus a lot of rigid filterings that lifecycle marketers are just kind of pounding their head over at the keyboard creating all day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you said it best. We were talking during the prep call that AI is helping lifecycle marketers realize the promise of lifecycle. And I think that sums it up so nicely. Like there are so many capabilities and things we can do now. And just a reminder of where we're coming from. Again, there are all of these kind of stacked branches, stacked filters, lots of duplicative content. It's big, it's fragile. And when you have to make one change, then there's this waterfall of other changes to make. And that's kind of the best that we could do before AI. It's kind of hard to scale, hard to QA, not you're not able to optimize this at all. And then there's like a next step to this. It's a more dynamic lifecycle journey, but it's still really manual. It's still manually done. So I think the question is, how can we make that happen with AI, but now on the fly? So I think I want to pause here because that evolution comes with a trade-off. I think things are getting smarter and faster, but how do we make sure that we still have clarity in what's happening with our AI and what's happening within our maps? Maybe, Neha, what are some of the systems and checks that lifecycle marketers should have in place to remain kind of in control here?
Yeah, and we think about that a lot as we build AI tooling, because one of the big, like you said, the trade-off is, yes, AI can do everything, but what is really going on and how do we empower the marketers to be in control? So a couple things that we really focus on, again, are, hey, how do you get a really good visibility on anything that AI is generating, for example? Can you review content before it goes out to your users? The second thing we look at a lot is explainability. So we sometimes make trade-offs where, yes, AI can be very powerful, one-to-one personalization and whatnot, but that doesn't give you power to understand why it did a certain thing. And when you don't have the whys behind it, how do you take actions and make it more strategic? So we sometimes say, you know what, we're not going to go for A+ with AI. We're happy with A- as long as we give you that control and visibility. So that's the second piece, which sort of relates to explainability and interpretability, where we also think about how do we report some of these things that AI is doing, not just for the lifecycle marketers, but also for their leadership, for their broader stakeholders and teams, right? So those are the kind of things that we're constantly thinking about, because like we were talking earlier, that's where adoption comes in, right? Like it's one thing where, sure, AI is moving in different directions, getting adopted everywhere, but we also want to start to think about how does it all fit and make sense for you as you're, working across different teams and in different messy workflows.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Meli, how are you thinking about the visibility into AI journeys and how are you staying in control of that?
I think a big piece of it is the same way that lifecycle marketers don't just test to test. When we're setting up something, we want to be answering a real question, taking that approach and kind of mapping it into the way that we're approaching our AI tooling, where we want to really be intentional about where we're integrating that AI and getting learnings and real-time savings benefits from it. And so I think that helps a bit with the overwhelm factor of being able to manage all of the AI tools that we're leveraging and having access to, so that we can have the full cycle of introducing a test, really like being in touch with the agent and understanding what type of content it's producing, actively managing that so that we can have outputs that we want and care about, being variants that we have live, and ensuring that we're also taking the time to step back and really think about what the results are telling us, so that we can bake it into our next steps versus just taking an approach of integrating AI and hoping that any efficiency is a net positive. To Neha's point of an A- versus an A+, starting small and really starting to piecemeal forward makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think it's all about being that AI manager and treating AI like a new employee that's just onboarded. You're adding small things every day, you're teaching it, you're making sure that it has access to the right systems and the right data and the right things. I think that's a major piece in how AI will work with our lifecycle journeys. kind of a preview for the next section that we'll get into, but has there been an aha moment for either of you where AI has really shown a lot of promise and you were like, oh, this is amazing. This gives me a tool that I wasn't able to do before?
I can start with, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, Neha, I was going to say one of the big moments for me was our first demo with JustWords, actually, because I think forever as a lifecycle marketer, I've been in worlds where verticalized content or persona-based content is really meaningful, and it's been something that has been incredibly hard to scale. I think the lifecycle folks who are on this call probably know that journey of building their own version of the octopus and really wanting to invest in content for all segments, and then having to go back to their data team and figure out what volumes actually matter, who is actually converting, and winnow that list of everybody who they want to get very tailored content into just a bucket of a few people. And so being able to kind of break that glass ceiling we were facing on the personalization piece, because we have tooling that can automate a lot of the very manual previously components, was one of my first realizations, I guess, a year and a half ago now, of being able to have a tool that solved something that I've faced for pretty much my entire life cycle career.
That's amazing. Neha, did you have something to add, or did that kind of cover where you were going?
Well, your example is better than mine. No, I'll share something more recent, I guess, that we're seeing that's very exciting, and it's still baking and building. We're seeing, for the first time with AI, we can ask any and every question from different systems. So for example, we can connect customer to Customer IO and JustWords and whatnot, right? And ask questions like, how many campaigns am I running? Which ones are working? Which ones are not? What are my personas like? What did I learn across 100 campaigns in the last 2 years? That's a very exciting initial space where you can, like, going back to where we were talking about messy and manual, like we can start to now audit, consolidate things in one place. So I'm excited about that future. I don't know what that would pan out into, but those are interesting aha moments we're seeing.
Yeah, I think that's so much of my experience with AI is I don't know what I can do with it yet, but I know it's going to be cool. And I think on the analysis piece, that's a major part, is just, here's all of my information, all of these campaigns I've run. Tell me what's working best. That feels like a major unlock, and I'm excited to see where that goes. So we kind of talked about this in 3 steps, really: the segment step, the mapping step, and the content step. We want to think about, like, who are you talking to? Where are they in their journey? And when do they need to, what do they need when they get there? I think we want to tell this story a little bit for Meli, how you're doing this today at Notion. How are you targeting with specificity and thinking about segmentation today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for us, we always start with who our users are. We care a lot about our users and what they're hoping to solve with our tool. And so kind of the first steps are really looking at some of the first party data that they're providing us as they're onboarding, and thinking about the most meaningful ways that we can tailor their journey based on that. And so for us, it's things like understanding what pain points that user has. When they come to us, they see an onboarding survey that asks how they want to use our product, and being able to really map that into the first experiences that they're taught about and how to use Notion, so that they can get to that aha moment a bit faster, which we have a lot of tests running. Some work, some don't work. It's always going to be a work in progress. But being able to have access to clear data is something really critical for us, because we also just have such a broad swath of users who we are covering, and your segmentation is only as good as your data. So there's a lot of pieces that we really need to be sure are in place before we can have our dream realized.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there particular signals that you look at that are really helpful for the way you build journeys? Any, like, North Star things you're looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we always want to have our users be on kind of the happy path of the highest intent. So returning to the product, taking core and product actions, completing some of those gold events during onboarding. So for us, we look at a lot of kind of time-bound, action-based combinations of, has a user taken X action by Y date, to be able to really ensure we're meeting them where they are and we're not outpacing the user with the advanced content that we're putting in front of them. and taking that into account so that we can always pull ourselves back and reintroduce basic concepts if we feel like users are not advancing with the way they're actually engaging with Notion.
Yeah, that's amazing. Anything to expand on here? Like, how are you making sure that you can get all of the right people with all of the amounts of data that you have into segments? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it looks like this. The segment builder is something we definitely rely on heavily. So a lot of it is building that journey for new users. I think that's a kind of universal starting place for everyone. The welcome series is so critical, and to the point of kind of realizing the promise of Lifecycle in this new dynamic AI-powered world. It's an area that can benefit a lot from having more customization involved. So for us, we look at when a user has signed up, what actions they've taken to kind of understand, are they on that happy path of high intent, high engagement, or are they on a path where maybe they've gotten stuck early on? And then what have they told us about themselves? I think first party data is always the most reliable to really ensure that we can serve them content that helps them get unstuck and realize the ways that they can solve the pain points they stated with the product that we have.
Yeah, amazing. And I think one of the trickiest parts, again, about segmentation is building those lists out with a lot of trial and error. I think there's a lot of tweaks, and as the data grows, it's kind of impossible to remember every lever that you can pull. So at Customerio, we've got this AI segment builder, so you can describe the logic you want, or you can pick from real-time suggestions based on the data that lives in your workspace. So instead of like increased data being overwhelming, it's a way to actually achieve personalization at scale. Meli, how are you, I guess, personalizing at scale beyond just the hello first name? Like, what are some of the pieces of first-party data that you can pull in through these segments?
Yes, absolutely. So for us, we have all of our customer product interaction data connected with Customerio so that we can really understand, has a user taken an action in the product? And I think in an ideal world, we would have every nuanced set of data. That becomes really overwhelming really quickly. So we try and keep it under control and ensure that we have clear definitions on what all of our different events and attributes mean. But for being able to trigger journeys and route users correctly, I think we kind of start with the core attributes of those user segments and then really try and inform where we're branching users into kind of a new path based on those action-based triggers, something like when they use a new tool, when they use Notion's AI, we know that they have some traction within that realm so that we can start to put them on a better path of education for where they are within our customer journey.
I love that. I love that it's better for us as lifecycle marketers, but also for our users. I think getting that more personalized content and something that's really specific to where they're at, just it does improve the experience. And I think that's a major unlock with all of this. I think switching gears a little bit, Neha, how are you looking at this from the JustWords lens?
Yeah, I guess connecting the dots on the segment builder and how we have different segments now in Customerio, we would take those segments and basically get rid of this octopus that we talk about, right? And then start to think through, given these segments and the different branches you're thinking about, how do we take all of these and start to think how to personalize content? And so not just personalizing it, let's say, based on a plan type, but what if you could take multiple things together and then start to create a more complex story in your email or whichever channel you're using, rather than having to sort of manage this octopus and one at a time look at different emails, look at their metrics, figure out what to do next, which is a whole project, and Meli can talk more about it. But that's where we started, and even the demo that Meli was mentioning, that was our initial starting point on, hey, this is so complex and painful. So how do we marry all of the segmentation and audience understanding back to content? And Meli, I love your thoughts on it too.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is encapsulated here of taking all of these branches, enabling learning through testing a lot faster, because in this old rigid world, we were doing a lot of that branching manually. So if we wanted to test some sort of value proposition A versus value proposition B and see how it resonated with a certain segment of our users, all of that was kind of being branched by someone on our marketing team. And so now when we're in this world where we have the ability to run multivariate testing, we can have a whole list of different options for messaging that we want to test, CTAs we want to test, and more deeply just kind of looking at email layouts and all of the complexities of things that we hope to combine variables for, baking in persona data, data around what users have done, and not having to branch it specifically for each one. So I think that's been a huge unlock, is just consolidating a lot of those pieces of the segmentation that we want to be leveraging with the personalization levels that we hope to have as our output, and not needing to build 10, 20 branches to do so and have a test and learn setup that brings us value.
Amazing. And I think this is an example of some of that you're speaking about. Can you talk more to this?
Yeah, I think something that I love to see is just the volume of variants you can have live, and be able to really track and test all of the different components at once, to understand how those are resonating with different audiences, being able to see what personas you're working with or what language and regions you're working with, and how the trends differ across those. And I think I have a bit more to talk about it on the next slide for how Notion is kind of leveraging our mapping here. But I think it also comes with a little bit of that, not a warning, but being really active. I think it's easy to get excited. I know I did when I saw how much I could have live at once. But that's where my map for implementation comes in a bit, is again, kind of those basic principles of being really pragmatic about where we're leveraging AI, so that we're not outpacing our own ability to be an active manager with setting live too much at once. And really thinking about those sequences where we felt blocked by our ability to scale and the personalization that we're hoping to achieve, or even just, I think everyone has that one sequence where they really want to be updating things and they just don't have time to give it the love that it deserves. It's also a great place to kind of leverage, an agent to be able to create the content for that branch and then benefit from the learnings there, even if you can't be really actively engaged in it. But ensuring that you're using the agent's capabilities to have rules baked in, telling it your brand guidelines, what to stay away from, what's worked before, all of those things I think didn't feel super natural to me at first, of like, how am I supposed to communicate this? And what if I, constrain it too much or let it be too free? But playing around and being really active within that, so you can find the balance. And then again, on my sprinkle of warning of ensuring you maintain it in a scalable way, of just not living in a set it and forget it world, but really revisiting the tools to be sure that you're synthesizing those learnings and finding the trends. And tools like JustWords have the ability to summarize a lot of that for you, but you will always have more context about your tool, your users, the insights your research team is providing, the insights your product marketing team is providing, to really pull that story all together and be able to share value with the rest of your company about what's effective for your different segments. So I think that's another kind of like key point to remember and keep in the back of your mind.
I think that's really good advice. I'm curious how you choose what to test first, or kind of if there's a specific stage in the journey that you started with, or what that looks like as you started to roll out AI in your life cycle journeys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we were a bit bold where we took the strategy of, instead of going with our maybe more neglected kind of series first of ones that don't get as much attention, we wanted to just see if it worked and see what it could do for us. And so we started with some of our most important series first. I think that's kind of dependent on the marketer, the risk tolerance, their trust in AI tooling and their partners. But for us, I think one area where we had really wanted to personalize and felt that cap was within our onboarding, because there is so many different ways to learn Notion as a product and so many different types of users that we serve. So we knew that if there were to be a big unlock, that's where it would be, and wanted to start with it first and foremost.
That's amazing. I love that you just went all in and were trying something that you could see a lot of different impacts with. Awesome. Meli, I think this is more kind of digging into further on that onboarding side, what that looks like and how y'all have accomplished this.
Yeah, I will probably pass a bit of it to Neha on the way that JustWords actually works behind the scenes, because something we've chatted a lot about is being able to understand the results, what works, being able to have that kind of piece where we're actively reviewing. But overall, I think the main takeaway on our end is the ability to have those quick learnings and run iterative multivariable testing with real recommendations for what we should do next. But I'll pass to Neha for a peek behind the curtain on kind of how her system works.
Awesome.
Yeah, I guess just connecting back to the previous discussion, right, where AI is able to show scale, and that's great. And, we all got very excited about the scale, the number of tests, and, let's bring all the campaigns and all the use cases in place. But I think, like we were talking, being a manager, your AI manager or whatever, right, where you can both communicate with different agents, you can communicate with AI, you can keep a tab on how it's doing, right? Like, set and forget is great, but how do you still manage that and sort of make your own bets on what makes sense? That's something that we work very closely with Meli on, right? And so coming back to what this is showing is, when you have that much scale, you then need to interact with AI differently, where you're asking for, in this case, aggregated insights, where it's saying, hey, you're running, I don't know, 100 plus tests. What are we learning from all of these tests, right? You don't have the luxury now to go into every single journey and email, because there's just too many of them. And so this is an example of also AI doing that kind of aggregation, where it's saying, hey, of all the 100 tests, here's what's working well for your users. And this is a recommendation that you can not only apply for your lifecycle teams, but also potentially your product teams can take some of this. Your sales team can learn some of this. We also try to think very critically in terms of what truly didn't work for our users, because that's how we can predict cohorts and personas in the future. So what did your users what did your users not care about? So for example, they don't care for clever subject lines. They want to get to the point, right? So things like that are also very insightful, because it differs based on who your user base is, which kind of goes back to what Meli was saying. You got to know your users at the end of the day. That's what it all comes down to. So this kind of completes that picture.
I love that. Have there been any surprises that y'all have seen, maybe like in Notion or Neha, other examples when you've been doing these analysis, like anything that you thought would be working well that you didn't expect show up across in JustWords?
A very fun one was using the word AI. So we talk with so many companies about it, because everybody wants to, talk about their AI product or AI features. And depending on your, user base, a lot of people are fatigued by, why are you talking about AI, but we do not know how to use it. So something that I thought Notion did really well was to also talk about Notion AI, but also how do you actually apply it in your use cases? Like, how do you, for example, use Notion AI to create a brief within Notion, right? Like that messaging that tied back to the core use case definitely moved the needle more compared to just talking buzzwords on AI, which was kind of, it was kind of meta and funny, but a pattern that we're seeing, not surprisingly.
That's a great one. We're seeing the market trends real time. I think everyone is experiencing a little AI fatigue.
I think so. As I mentioned earlier, like there's so many possibilities. So I think giving people specific examples of this is what you can do, and here's one small step you can take, that just feels really nice, feels very good for the user, I think. Awesome. Neha, can you talk about these multi-armed bandits that JustWord has?
Yeah, so we thought we'll also give you behind the scenes when we talk about AI, creating magic and understanding things, but what is really happening behind the scenes and how is it truly working? And so there's two different concepts that we use. The first one is the always-on multi-armed bandits. Really, the idea there is as you're creating a lot of different email content and email types, this particular algorithm, it makes sure that it can reallocate traffic to your winning variants. So instead of you having to manually switch branches or split traffic differently, it understands what to show to different users and show it based on their context. So not just here's the winner and here's the loser, but also given that you are, I don't know, a product manager or a founder and you speak Spanish, like what is the best thing to show to you? So things like that. It also supports multiple metrics. So maybe I know the industry is going away from open rates. They're looking at click rates, but also everybody wants to know that can we move our company's KPIs? So can we take those metrics and optimize on those? So that's something that the system does too. I threw in a caveat there. This system does as good as the best AI variant you've got. So it still looks into the pool of, let's say, all the approved variants that you're testing with and sees if I find something that's outperforming everything else, I'm going to go and give that more love. So what you're seeing in the graph there is it first explores every single variant, right? Like that's why all the colors have sort of the same, the bars are the same in the beginning. And for example, in this case, it sees the green doing better than the others, and it starts to throw more traffic in the green and eventually kills the others that are not doing as well.
That's amazing. It's amazing to not have to go in and analyze that manually and redirect things or turn things off as you need. That is amazing. Awesome. Tell me more about auto-tune also. I'd love to hear more about this.
Yeah, so auto-tune is our greedier version of the always on, where the caveat with always on was at some point, if the AI variant is not good, what do you do? How do you take it one step further? So auto-tune would kick out variants from the test pool and take all the learnings we were talking about, where we had a lot of aggregated learnings across experiments, and uses it to predict content. So it actually really optimizes LLMs based on all of the insights and experiments we were running in the past. For us, that's what completes the picture, because the idea is that over time, content should get better for your company and your use cases. And so, yeah, that's the easiest way to think about it is if all the content you're testing is not quite hitting what your users want, it goes beyond those content pieces and starts to create better and better content for your users.
That's amazing. Meli, I'd love to know if there's any sort of like anecdotal successes that you can share that Notion has seen from doing content in this way or from these changes. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've had some great success with being able to have more of that persona-based messaging baked in with our onboarding sequence. That was our starting place, and happily our bet on being aggressive there really paid off. And it did enable us to have our personalization be tailored far beyond what we were doing before, which, you know, everyone knows is the ultimate goal, to be able to have that use case, have that industry, have that intent of the user all encompassed within the copy that we were using to ensure from the very first touch point we could kind of get them hooked. And we saw great click and conversion increases for active users on that. And I think it was one of our big successes to be able to have more traction with the personas that we really cared about. Another area I think is really exciting is also within our localized content, because we do see a lot of different regional performances of different countries have different thresholds for engaging with email more and less. And so it's been an area that's historically tricky, especially as someone who doesn't speak all of the languages of the regions we serve, to be able to have that content produced and pull learnings from. So that was another big unlock, was just being able to have more optimizations invested in our regional markets.
Incredible. I love that. Well, I think we've covered a lot. We've talked about strategy, mapping, segmentation, tools, lifecycle, and I think AI and lifecycle can feel a little chaotic, but we're also going to add to that a bit with some rapid fire hot takes. So we'll do this 1 minute round. Meli and Neha, I've got a stack of questions that I want just your gut reactions to. So give me first thing that comes to mind, quick ideas. For everyone watching live, throw your own hot takes in the chat. We'd love to hear them. We may get to a few if we run out before the buzzer runs out too. So feel free to pop those in. Let's kick it off. All right, just jump in whenever you have something that comes to mind. What's the number one thing marketers do?
I'm sorry, Molly, we couldn't hear the very end of your question.
No. What do marketers get wrong about segmentation?
Ooh. I think that it has to, yeah, exactly. I think also that it has to be too specific. Of like you can land in the middle. You won't always need to account for every single nuance.
Amazing. What's an overhyped fear about AI in marketing that you're tired of hearing?
That it will take all of our jobs.
Preach. What's the most overlooked moment in a customer journey?
Ooh. I would say reactivation, when they come back after being dormant.
What's a retention play everyone's still doing but shouldn't? Oh, you're right out.
I'm curious. I hope the chat can answer that.
Congrats, Raiders. You've survived the wrath of the Ark, and you're just one step from the treasure. Don't let up now.
Awesome. We are going to dig into some of the questions that we have in the chat. Before I get there, we're going to go over our scavenger hunt results. But if you have questions, please put them in the chat or in the questions tab, and we'll get to those in just a second. So going over the poll results, question 1, what stop did you find the map? The right answer. Wait, do I reveal the answer? I don't want to give everyone the answer. Let's see. What's everyone thinking? Ooh, it's a close race between those first two. Correct answer here is the reality of AI in marketing. And I think this is kind of a trick question. You could say clarity and control, but if you said that, you could also be right too. All right, we'll go into question 2. What stop did you find the fedora? Results trickling in. You're right again. It's the reality of AI and marketing here. All right, question 3. What stop did you find the shadowy figure? Ooh, I don't know if we'll get many people who get this one right. Let's see. There we go. Segment, map, and connect is the correct answer here. What stop did you find the golden arc? There we go. This one's obvious. We've got this. Rapid fire hot takes. And a bonus question. How many times did you see Indy throughout our show today? All right, everyone is right. 5 is the correct answer. Thanks for playing along with us there. Meli, Neha, we're going to get into some of the questions that we've gotten. First up, Elizabeth asks, how are you getting all of these system data into one place? We have all of this data siloed in each individual software. Meli, can you speak to how y'all maybe have accomplished this through Notion?
Yes, absolutely. Elizabeth, I feel for you. I've been many places where the data silo is real and it makes it so hard to have that visibility that you want into all of the personalization for building the segments the way we've spoke about. So I think a lot of it is about getting the investment internally from your end teams and ensuring that you have support to connect those silos, because the only way to do it is through the investment within your tool stack, and to have someone who can build out your API integrations and pass that data from one system to another. It's not always an easy thing to do. And I think there may be workarounds for you if you have first-party data that you can collect in meaningful ways that doesn't conflict with building a journey for users. You can have that as a starting place to hopefully give you some of the data that you need to make a case internally. But a lot of it is investment from an engineering team to build those connections to ensure that whatever ESP you're using has a robust set of customer data to be able to leverage.
I think
Which
it's, we always
I feel
talk
like not a magic bullet at all. So I'm sorry for the answer.
it is a struggle sometimes where you talk about sales and marketing alignment, but you need like engineering marketing alignment, product marketing alignment. You've got to have some resources and kind of have credibility to build that. Neha, I think this next one is great for you. Simone says, I'm in a regulated industry with low risk appetite compliance. How do you manage AI produced predictive content to ensure it's totally compliant? And how would you work with a compliance team to reassure them that the content will be industry compliant?
Yeah, that's a great question. So every new content that's produced by AI, we, for example, would go through a review workflow where your team would have the ability to review content, send proofs, and also reject content if for whatever reason it's not looking good. I think there's a really good point on how do we now work with, let's say, compliance teams or legal teams. So something that comes up in more regulated spaces like fintech is, hey, we have 5 different stakeholders the content has to get reviewed from. And so we're constantly also building towards that, where we're, again, going back to what workflows do they use? Do they want a doc, a PDF, right? Like, what can they come into the platform and do this? How do we create cadences around it, right? Like, we don't want you to go in and approve content every single day. So how do we create a good process around it? But I guess sort of stepping back, the change that we're seeing is it's coming where AI is going to be your IC and you're going to be its manager. So you want to start figuring out how all these teams work together to start to provide that oversight where both you are feeling comfortable from a compliance standpoint, but you can also guide the AI to like take those decisions better. So some of the automations that we've done in this aspect is how can you throw in your compliance rules clearly into AI? So at least it takes a first pass at it, which is 80-90% correct. And then you can, again, have that human oversight for the rest of the 10%.
Awesome. That's really good insight. I think we thought we were saved by the bell with that last hot takes question, but Chris is curious. What are some common retention plays that don't actually work? Maybe Meli, can you take this one?
Yes, that's a great question. I think being able to just like a spray and pray, I would say like a lot of us try it and are like, let's just blast users who we see lapsing and see if we can get anyone back in the funnel. I think the payoff for that sometimes is not necessarily strong enough to warrant it. But I would say there are ways to have relevance within your messaging that can make it more promising. But that's the first one that comes to mind of a retention play that doesn't necessarily work. Not always just throwing a message at someone if it's not paired with something compelling. It's going to be pretty low fidelity for getting people back in your funnel.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent answer. Denise says in the chat, overly discounting to win back customers is another great one, which I think is very
true. One. Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Meli and Neha, for being here, for sharing your expertise, digging into AI and Lifecycle. It has been so fun talking with you all about this. And thanks to everyone who is live, who has joined us here today. Make sure to check your inbox after. There may be some treasure coming your way from the scavenger hunt. And thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.